Welcome, fifth graders, to Myth Day 3. Today we're going to be working on a longer myth. Tuesday we read Thor's Magic Hammer. Yesterday we read Narcissus. Narcissus? Narcissus. There we go, that's pronounced correctly. And today we're going to read Quetzalcoatl Creates People. But first, let's look at what our learning targets for the day are. You will review features of myths. You will read and summarize a longer myth. You will answer text-dependent comprehension questions. And then you will build oral language and vocabulary. All right. So let's start off with our features of myths. Myths often take place before time or recorded history, as we know it, began. So it happens generally before people arrive on the earth. Myths have gods, goddesses, and heroes with supernatural powers. Myths have characters that are human-like, or humans or human-like, and experience human emotions. Characters often perform heroic tasks or go on quests. Myths often explain the worldview of a people or culture and may have religious elements. Myths often explain the origins of the world, its creatures, or elements in nature. And again, remember that myths are created by less sophisticated society to explain what is happening in the world. So when we have to remember that. So when we look at and review it, we don't think, oh, what a backwards society. They didn't have the knowledge we have. We have so much more technology and so much knowledge, so much more information and information on hand that we're able to come up with these with scientific principles but whereas back in when these myths oftentimes where they were created, they didn't have this information, so they just had to try and guess and try and come up with an explanation. Okay, all right, so what are we doing today? First thing you're going to need, you're going to get a copy of the text for closed reading. If you don't remember where they are over by the water fountain. All right. Oh, that's right here. Look on page 71 through 74 or 73 through 77. It depends upon what resource you look for. In the book, in my teacher manual, it says 73 through 77. But in the student, when I look at the resources, it says 71 to 74. So it's one of those two. Either way, if you get around the 70s, you're probably going to find the story. All right? Then you're going to look through the passages, the pages and images of the story, and it's Quetzalcoatl creates people. That is a hard word, difficult word to say. And then after you kind of look through the pages and the images of the story, why don't you respond to the first two prompts in your comprehension packet. When you're done, restart the video and we'll continue talking. All right, hopefully you've paused and you are now ready to read the story, Quetzalcoatl Creates People. And then when you are done with the story, restart the video and I will lead you through a discussion. All right, fifth graders, hopefully you are done reading the story. And hopefully you have some information. And what I'd like you, as we're reading longer myths, you really need to pay attention to the key events that happen. And then so it's very important that you are paying attention and you take your time, especially with something like this. But now that you are done reading, I'm going to try and read this to you, and hopefully I will not butcher the names too much. So here we go. Quetzalcoatl Creates People, an Aztec myth. Long ago, there were people on Earth, but some of the gods were displeased with the way the people were living their lives. They created a great flood that destroyed all the people. After all that destruction, the other gods looked down at Earth and discussed what they saw. Earth is still a lush sea of beauty, said the goddess Milky Way. If only there could be people populating this splendid place once again, said Star Goddess wistfully. Milky Way and Star Goddess remained silent for a time. Then, as though they were sharing the same thought, they turned in unison to look at Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god. Quetzalcoatl, said Star Goddess, Only you are clever enough and brave enough to create viable new life. We are sure that under your caring guidance, the people you create will be well-bred and responsible, said Milky Way. Quetzalcoatl considered what the gods were getting at and said, "You are asking me to perform a great feat, one fraught with danger." "Yes, we are," said Star Goddess. "You must go to the land of the dead and collect the bones of those who died long ago." "It is difficult and risky, we know," said Milky Way. "Yum Simil, the death god, is full of malice. There is a chance you will not make it back, but we know you can do it." Quetzalcoatl accepted the task and headed down under the surface of Earth towards Yum Simil and his dreaded land of the dead. "Who goes there?" bellowed a loud and ominous voice. It belonged to the god Yum Simil, a volatile malcontent. He could be a volcano of anger. "It is I, Quetzalcoatl. I have come for the bones of the dead." "My bones?" scoffed the death god. "You cannot take my prized possessions." "The bones are not yours, Yum Simil," said Quetzalcoatl tersely. "They are the bones of Earth's ancestors. We will use them to create new humans to populate the planet." "And what makes you think they will fare better than the last batch of wretched beings?" asked the Lord of the Dead menacingly as he stroked his pet owl. "They will flourish with the proper guidance," says Quetzalcoatl, "and I will give it to them." Yum Simil thought for a moment. He had no intention of giving the bones to Quetzalcoatl, but because he was a maladjusted and malevolent god, he decided to play a trick on the good god. "You may have the bones, Quetzalcoatl, but first you must blow this conch shell to announce our arrangement. The louder the sound, the more bones you can take. But if you make no sound, then you must stay with me for eternity." That did not seem like an unrealistic request or difficult task for Quetzalcoatl. He took the conch shell and blew with all his might. But there was no sound. He tried again, inhaling so deeply that the trees bent. Then he released a tornado from his lungs. Still, there was no sound. Quetzalcoatl turned the shell around in his hands and quickly realized the shell was a sound trap. There is a hole to blow into, but no other holes in the shell, so no sound can get out. "No sound, no bones," said Yum Simil with a sinister laugh. I see that the Lord of the Dead is playing one of his tricks on me. Well, I have some tricks too." Quetzalcoatl summoned the worms that dwelled in the land of the dead to come forward. Then he commanded them to burrow holes in the conch. Next, Quetzalcoatl called forth all the hornets that dwelled in the land of the dead. The hornets flew into the conch and buzzed ferociously. Finally, Quetzalcoatl put the conch to his lips once more and blew as hard as he could again. The shrill, whistling sound blasting from the shell, coupled with the buzzing of the hornets, rattled the Lord of the Dead. "He is a powerful foe!" exclaimed Yum Simil, clasping his ears. "The bones!" said Quetzalcoatl as he strode toward the Lord of the Dead, hands outstretched. "Pah! Take them!" said the Lord of the Dead. Quetzalcoatl gathered up the bones of the people of the past world and then made his way up the tunnel that led to the surface of the earth. But the Lord of the Dead wasn't about to give up that easily. He created a large chasm. Quetzalcoatl fell into it, down, 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 crashing against sharp rocks and breaking all of the bones he was carrying. Quetzalcoatl's hope for a new, improved breed of people were dashed as he looked down at the fragments of bones in his arms. They were splinters of kindling in his hands. Disappointed, but undaunted, he righted himself and made his way to the surface. Quetzalcoatl headed toward the dwelling of Serpent Woman, for she owned the sacred pestle for which to grind the bones into a powder. Quetzalcoatl had an idea about how to turn the pieces of bones into humans yet. Serpent Woman agreed to help Quetzalcoatl, but explained, "There is one problem. These humans will be different sizes. Those made from large pieces of bones will be large, and those made from smaller pieces will be small." Quetzalcoatl nodded his head thoughtfully. "That will be fine, even better, for the world should be populated with all kinds of people." Serpent Woman placed the powder in a golden bowl and handed it to Quetzalcoatl. He added a drop of his blood and stirred, explaining, "By adding a drop of my blood to the powder, I am giving life to these old bones." From the mixture were formed new people. Some were tall and some were small. Some were sturdy, others were more delicate. but all were beautiful in the eyes of Quetzalcoatl, who nearly sacrificed himself to give them life. Now, now that we've read the story, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to answer the questions, the rest of the questions on the page marked Unit 5, Week 2, Day 3. We've discussed how heroes in myths often go on quests. What quest does Quetzalcoatl undertake in this myth? And what can you infer about his character based on the fact that he willingly undertakes a difficult mission? Then reread column 2, paragraph 2 on page 72. Yum Simil thought for a moment. What does the third person narrator tell us about the death god? How does this affect our understanding of the events that follow? And then the final one is reread column 2, paragraph 1 on page 73. What metaphor does the writer use in this paragraph? What does the metaphor refer to? Okay, and that's when he's talking about the bones. Okay, so technically that would be on page 3. All right, the top paragraph of the second column. All right, so today we read a more complex myth and we summarized the key events that happened. Tomorrow we will reread the myth and dig deeper into the text to compare and contrast the characters and analyze the text structure and language. Remember, sometimes we need to read a selection several times to notice different aspects of the text. And that's one of the things I really want you to realize in terms of why I have you read it once on your own and then I read it the second time. Because it's not just about you reading it, but it's about hearing it a second time to make sure that we understand more of it. And with the understanding being that the more times we hear it, the more we understand. And the more we understand, the better we are going to understand it. All right, that's all I got. Talk to you in a bit.